Hi everyone, I'm Tanishka, you might know me as the Moon Woman, and I have been wanting to share this experience with you for the last few days because we are now heading into the new moon in Pisces. Now this whole month of the sun moving through Pisces has really heightened our sensitivities. It's brought a lot of us face to face with our victimhood or our martyrdom. And it's all an opportunity to transcend it. Because Pisces is the last sign on the zodiac wheel, this is when we have to really look at our limitations, at what we've outgrown, at karmic patterns of behavior that no longer serve us. So instead of going round and round on sort of Groundhog Day and re-wounding ourselves, this is an opportunity to step up and change the dance to a spiral and shift gears up to a new playing field. Now that's especially so this year because numerologically 2018 adds up to an 11. So we're being put through a quantum shift, to step up into embodying our godly selves, our divine selves, which is the acknowledgement that we are creating our subjective reality with every thought, word, and deed. So if you don't like what it is you're manifesting in your waking world, this is an opportunity to just step down into the subconscious, into the realm of dreams, myths, symbols, archetypes, and look at what is sitting in Pandora's box so that you're not unconsciously enacting the drama. So allow me to share with you my drama from the last few weeks in the hope that it serves you as a catalyst for perhaps seeing parallels in your own journey. So I'm in Bali. I will be returning in less than 48 hours to my homeland, Australia, where I'm staying. Ubud is a translation of the Bahasa word medicine. So people get drawn to this vortex when they need healing. So I was yet another candidate. And when I arrived, I was very clear that I wanted to heal whatever blocks were stopping me truly, embodying my divine self, but also be open to intimacy, be open to connecting with the brothers, because the last 20 years it's like I've been living on the planet Venus. Amazing women all around me, teaching women's mysteries for 22 years, sitting with the most incredible women every dark moon. It's been truly a blessed journey, and a necessary one to heal my feminine, which really was quite damaged. But I could feel that chapter coming to an end, and it was like, okay, it's time to expand my world. So, hi Olivia, hi Crystal, hi Tammy, hi Jen. Thanks for tuning in. So, the showdown that happened for me on the full moon in Virgo, which is the opposite sign to Pisces. So, for those that don't know, the full moon will always be in the opposite sign to what the sun is transiting through. And the challenge in that is for us to try and find the balance between those opposites, between those polarities. So sun moving through Pisces, which as I explained is, karmic lessons. And Virgo is the sign of health. So often the catalyst, what will culminate, it'll be seeded at new moon, but what will come to a head, a climax at full moon is often some kind of health or healing crisis. So the form that took for me, hi Labiba, is my back went into spasm. Now I have a disintegrated disc at L5. And it didn't occur to me until just a couple of years ago that the event that created, hi Loz, that disintegration in my disc, hey Sharon, is a car accident that happened just a couple of days before my 21st birthday, okay, which is when, you know, during those first 3 7-year cycles up to 21, that's when we're journeying through the bottom 3 chakras. So that's why it was considered you become an adult when you turn 21. That's when, you know, the energy moves into the heart, which is where the inner parent archetypes sit. If you want to know more about that information, check out my book, Creating Sacred Union Within, which is available on my website and also on Amazon. Anyway, enough of that. So I have this car accident, and the impact was from behind, so I didn't see it coming. You know, it was literally bolt out of the blue. And so what that anchored was the universe doesn't have my back as an illusory belief. Now, I didn't even realize that I had formed that belief in that moment. And I also didn't realize that I had experienced whiplash. Okay, so I didn't need one of those big, you know, foam things around my neck. However, the sacral is where I'd had the most issues. So it's interesting that I had an event where it played out physically. Now the gift, there's always an equal gift as well as an equal wound in any situation. The gift in that impact was that it struck my sacral, which awakened my kundalini. Now it didn't seem like much of a gift at first because that resulted in a lot of depression. Okay, just, you know, releasing all the pent-up energy in my sacral. And I'm a water sign, so the sacral is the element of water. And so I have 5 planets in Scorpio. I feel my emotions very, very intensely. And at the age of 7, when the energy moves from the base chakra into the sacral, is when I was plucked suddenly out of New Zealand and moved to North Queensland in Australia, which is kind of like the Deep South in America. It's, you know, especially in the 1970s, it was very bigoted. So I went from living in this little beachside community in New Zealand where I felt such a connection to the land, where the teachings of the indigenous people, the Maori, because of the treaty, was very integrated into the education system. And so the culture shock of going from that, you know, my best friend was a Maori girl, you know, we lived very much in communion with nature, to going to a place where I met, you know, my dad's side of the family that were racist, sexist, homophobic, yeah. And my school teacher led the bullying of me because of my New Zealand accent, because I couldn't read digital time, only clock face time, and I couldn't do cursive writing. I could only do printing. So she'd, you know, lead this harassment of me that New Zealanders were dumb and make me stay in at lunchtime and practice writing and correct me on the pronunciation of my own name, saying that it wasn't Tanya, it was Tanya, and you don't say dance or castle, you say dance or castle, and everyone would be laughing at me. So, you know, it was a traumatic event. So there were disturbances in the sacral chakra for me. Now, I was lucky enough to go back to New Zealand back to that beach where I lived. And for those who have read my Inner Goddess book or done my Inner Goddess course, you will know that the landscape for the archetype of Aphrodite or Venus, who sits in the sacral, the emotional center, which is in our belly and our lower back, within all of women, and men for that matter. Her landscape is the beach. So I was invited to speak at a yoga festival, and I knew it was going to be big, going back to this beach where I hadn't been since I was 7, that I deeply, deeply missed. And I was very fortunate to meet with a Maori elder who met with me there. That's a whole other story, which I won't get into now. And we did ceremony on that beach. And I still remember the waters coming around my ankle when I walked to that beach at dawn the next morning, and I just sobbed. It was like the mother just coming and giving me a hug, welcoming me back home. So, you know, I also did a workshop with this beautiful Hawaiian elder who took us in to see what totem animals were sitting in each of our chakras. And for me, it was whale in the sacral, and it was a baby whale, and there was so much grief there. So it's been, you know, years and years of working with the sacral. So here I am in Bali, full moon, and I have a shamanic healing on the day of the royal cremation here. So, you know, all the electricity is down, the Wi-Fi's, the ATMs, nothing's working because there is a death rite going on. And I have a scheduled shamanic healing, which I go to. Then the next day, I realized that it is exactly 1 year since my daughter suddenly left to go and live with her father. And she was only 13 at the time, and you know, I really spiraled in grief. Whilst I accepted that, you know, she was doing her Persephone journey and I wasn't going to stand in the way of that. But, you know, as a mum, that was difficult because it meant her moving to the other end of the country. And, yeah, so what had compounded that was I just booked flights for her to come with me on a round trip to London and New York, and then, you know, to do events that I'd been invited to speak at in the US. And I rang the airlines sobbing, like I was so upset. I was blowing my nose on a tea towel. I just, you know, anyone that's, you know, going through grief, you just, it's its own beast. It rides you until it's done. So I'm on the phone to the airlines trying to explain what's happened, and they were very clear that they weren't going to give me a refund. Had it been 24 hours earlier, they would have. The cutoff was 24 hours, but it was after 24 hours, but not yet 48 hours since I'd booked. So that spiraled me down into powerlessness, and it brought up that old belief that the universe didn't have my back, that I wasn't supported. And what they said to me at the time was, we'll reschedule the flight. So as long as you contact us in a year, before the 6th of March 2018, you can reschedule again and again. Each time it'll just cost $200 in a booking fee to reschedule, but that's what you can do to get around, you know, this loss of up to, God, it was about $7,000 Australian. It was all the money I had. So I ring back on, you know, this eve of the full moon, and again I get told, no, that isn't the case. We can't reschedule your flights. And because of the cremation and the Wi-Fi being down and whatever, I got cut off something like 4 or 5 times. So I spoke to 6 or 8 different customer service representatives, and each time I, you know, felt more frustrated, more powerless, more upset. And then I had to go for this healing, and I couldn't follow through. So I first thing the next morning, and again I get 2 different customer service reps that tell me they can't help me. And by this stage I've cracked, and I'm sobbing again. So I'm reliving this karmic wheel, going back to exactly where I was 12 months earlier, sobbing on the phone to American Airlines, trying to explain the human situation that was beyond my control that resulted in this, you know, inability to use $7,000 worth of airfares for me and my daughter. So I sit in bed for like 4 hours. I just can't get out of bed. I woke up at like, I don't know, dawn, and then 11 o'clock I finally go, right, going down the street to the French patisserie to cheer myself up. And my inner 7-year-old was taking my journal to write in, and my mandala and my texters to just do some inner processing, you know, to comfort myself. And so I take myself down to the patisserie. And who should walk in, but the couple who I'd had dinner with the previous night, and they didn't recognize me. They actually said, no, that's not Tanishka. We thought it was, but it couldn't be her. The energy is so low. So we had a good laugh about that when I recognized them. And they came over, bless them, and they sat with me for a couple of hours, and they witnessed me in my deepest wound, in my deepest vulnerability, even though we'd only met once or twice before. And they held a space for me to be seen in my grief. And once they left, I did my colouring in, and I researched the astrological transits that are happening for me right now, and journaled, and, you know, did my own process. Then that night, it was full moon, and I felt torn. I wanted to just go and hide at the local cinema, which is, you know, something that I've done a lot of in the last 10 years socially. You know, I've just really enjoyed my hiding out in film. But I went, no, you're here. This is full moon. There's a cacao ceremony on. You need to push beyond your comfort zone and go and participate with the world. So I'd heard about this incredible venue called Akasha, which I now understand is a vision of Sasha Stone's. It is just incredible. If you haven't been there and you come to Ubud, Bali, it is temple space. It's truly divine. So I go to this event. It's an exquisite cacao ceremony led by a wonderful man called Shiva. And yeah, feels like home. You know, he recognizes me from when I spoke at Bali Spirit a few years ago, and I connect in with more, you know, sort of local priests and priestesses, and just have a wonderful time. I meet a beautiful Chinese woman who does similar work to me, and through synchronicity, I mentioned that I'm needing a photographer for new shots for my website upgrade, and she's like, oh, I know someone great, he's beautiful, I'll introduce you. That all happens. You know, I was in the flow, serendipity, synchronicity. You know, it was like I'd walked through a vortex into this land of the gods, into another dimension. You know, I mean, this place, it's just mind-blowing. And everyone was dressed as gods and goddesses. You know, it was just like, ooh la la. So I'm feeling pretty good. And then my back goes into spasm, like at midnight, you know, like the breaking of the glass slipper or leaving it as you're, you know, it was as I was leaving. And I hobble out of this place, unable to actually stand up. And yeah, the nerve was impinged. So I was in constant nerve pain. I couldn't move, I couldn't stand, I couldn't walk. And it was me confronting one of my biggest fears, which is being alone, traveling, and being in this, Denise, I love your face that you posted, exactly, extreme vulnerability. So the gift in that was I was shown the universe really did have my back. So the owner of the guest house had the exact same disc disintegration at L5. He rang a local Balinese healer who came to see me, and whilst he didn't do skeletal manipulation, which is what I felt I really needed because I was out of alignment, it was so symbolic that by slipping down into my victim, into my story, and feeling all the emotion and the grief, my vibrational state had really gone down the plug hole, and I was out of alignment with my truth, with my innate divine higher intelligence, with spirit, with all that is. So I was happy to you know, get the support emotionally and energetically, but I knew I also needed to find an osteo. So this healer came. As soon as he placed one fingertip on my shoulder, I just started sobbing. And the Osho card I'd pulled for that day was sorrow, which shows Ananda who finds enlightenment through crying all night. And I sobbed, I howled, absolutely howled in the session. And he came again the next day, and again, I just howled. It was like I was clearing all this grief out of my sacral, and I recognized that the extreme physical nerve pain that I was in was a catalyst for getting all this old grief out of my sacral. In particular, what hurt the most was when he did reflexology into the chakra points in the center of my feet, which are the kidney chi meridians. It's always been unbearable for people to touch the soles of my feet. And he was really moving the energy, so I was just screaming, you know, which was quite terrifying for the local Balinese people, hearing these screams and sobs coming out of my room. Anyway, the guest house owner, bless him, they made my breakfast board here. He was checking in to check that I could manage to get up and down to the toilet on my own in the middle of the night. And he brought me a massaging cushion. He brought me heat pads. I mean, I really was being shown how supported that I am. And I contacted a friend who's a yoga teacher, and she suggested an osteo that she said was a back wizard. So I contacted her, and she said that she couldn't fit me in. She was fully booked for 2 weeks, in fact, until after I'd left the country. And every osteo I tried told me the same thing. So again, I was like, you know, my victim was right up. I'm like, I can't seem to get the help that I need, you know, feeling like that wounded child. And I was identified with that wounded self. Thanks, Kat. So I kept holding to the belief and invoking help from my ancestors on the understanding that this was something I'd taken on from my mother, who also had back issues, who also had a real struggle with this limiting belief that she wasn't supported, and it really played out in her life in a self-sabotaging way. Ironically, she was a Piscean. So I just kept, you know, holding this vision that I'm ready to heal this, bring in whatever needs to happen for me to heal this. And then 3 osteos who'd turned me away all contacted me and said, we will fit you in. So I went and saw one in Debsa, which is like an hour and a half's drive away. And then the next day I went to see this French woman. Her name is Nathalie Lejeune. And my goodness, this was not what I expected. This woman, I can't wait to tell the global sisterhood about this modality. Let me just double check what it's called. It's urethra genital osteopathy. I'd never heard of it. She told me to take off my clothes, leave on my underwear. She took one look at my body and she said, I knew it. She said, my intuition told me that I had to see you, and this is why. And she said, your kidney is in the wrong place. So what had happened all those years ago when I was in that car accident and experienced a twist, a whiplash, she explained that the energy, the impact went shooting up my central nervous cord. She said, oh, do you get problems here at the base of your neck? I said, yes, I get, you know, congestion of Kundalini energy. And she said, how are your periods? And I said, honestly, fucking excruciating. She said, I know. She said, how are your knees? So I've had an arthroscopy operation on this one. I've got torn meniscus on this one. She goes, yep, that's because your whole pelvic region is unstable, because all your inner organs are have been shifted around. They're in the wrong place. They're all twisted around to the left. And so all the ligaments for nearly 30 years have been under constant strain. So there's ligaments that join the cervix to the back. And she explained how the kidney is just suspended and the left one's in a different position to the right. And this explained why the birth with my daughter was beyond pain that I could have imagined. Yeah, all the pain, it was nerve pain in my back. And with every contraction, you know, my eyes were rolling back in my head. I was in existential grief, cursing God that it could so cool for women to bring through life. And, you know, I mean, yeah, I was flashing back to previous incarnations as a negress in the hull of a ship with my feet manacled in a slave trade boat. I mean, just beyond. I was in hell, and it was 2 years of depression to come out of that traumatic experience, which was my Ishtar descent. I write about that in my Inner Goddess Makeover book. So to have somebody look at my body and in one moment know what was going on with it, know why I had chronic pain in my left side, why it had gotten worse with age. So she gets me on the table, and I got to say, this woman's bedside manner was not just abrupt, she was downright rude. And I'm not, you know, that easily intimidated. I've got my own inner power, but, you know, yeah, I was a bit put off, right? So she is on top of my body, you know, wrenching around my inner organs, moving them manually, and it was so powerful. And then she said, I need to see you again after your period. And I said, well, I'm going back to Australia. And she's like, well, we're just going to have to do it now. And she gets on a rubber glove. I think you know where this is going. And she gets a few things inside of me, and she says, yep, your uterus is inverted. And she starts rummaging around. I am just now pissing myself laughing. I said, it feels like you're moving a shopping bag around in there. And she is moving my uterus, putting it back in its proper place. And she's in there massaging the ligaments that connect my cervix to my back. You know, with my periods, I didn't just get period pain in my ovaries, but in my back, down both legs, you know. And she's massaging the ligaments around the ovaries. I mean, everything, you know. Then it doesn't stop there. Fingers go up my rectum without any, you know, well, without any mood music, without any warning. But I wasn't traumatized by this. I was in such gratitude, in such trust. My every cell in my body consciousness knew that this woman understood the problem and she was fixing it. And I was laughing. I was so receptive. I was so open, as you would be. It's pretty remarkable given that I've been celibate the last 3 years. My body didn't know what had struck it. But in 24 hours, no nerve pain in my back. Now, I walked out of that session feeling like I just had rough sex. I got to tell you. And I said to my partner, driver, who, you know, we've got a lovely relationship with, he's married, he's got kids, you know, what had just happened in there. And I also saw a young Orthodox Jewish woman going in there with a newborn baby, and I thought, I wonder if she knows what she's in for. But I just, for every woman out there who has had a really traumatic birth, who has excruciating menstrual pain, who has incontinence, who has, you know, just instability in her pelvic region, which results, I mean, I had twisted my ankle twice in the last, you know, 3 months. I'd been told by healers there was no energy going down my legs. If I tried to sit in lotus for longer than 10 minutes at a kirtan or a yoga class, my legs would go completely numb. You know, even just sitting typing on my laptop, I would experience no feeling in both feet. You know, this is 30 years of not enough chi in my kidneys. And what really just went, oh my goodness, was, I love all the synchronicities. I'd been editing a testimonial reel of people that had done my Rainbow Bridge retreat, and a number of the participants kept saying, you know, Tanisha has this amazing fiery energy. Now, I'm a water sign. Yes, Mars is the sub-ruler of Pluto, but because my kidneys were all twisted up and out of place, they regulate the waters in the body. So my water element, my feminine, was dehydrated. This was putting pressure, dehydrating that disc, yeah, making my back more inflamed than it needed to be. And so this woman said, it's going to take 3 weeks. You need to drink